Chapter 368. Finally, we're finding out what the next moments of this huge clusterfuck of Elfhelm going downhill are really all about. Now, before this chapter came out, I remember a lot of people being very antsy about how this wasn't dialogue heavy, essentially being upset that there wasn't a lot of talking going on amongst characters. And I think to a certain extent, sure, maybe that is partially true. I think most good visual storytelling should be visual. And if there is dialogue, then it should be something that can't be revealed to us via visual thing, or at least to expand upon. This chapter does a lot more of that, does a lot more exposition with dialogue and characters. Mostly not with Guts, because whenever he's on his own, we rarely do hear what he's thinking unless it's something that we can't already tell from his reactions, which we do in this chapter. Guts's reaction, essentially, when he's falling down that chasm, is surrounded by all those entities and spirits that resemble the ones actually from Albion in the Conviction Tower. They're chanting for the sacrifice, and it's something that makes me feel, oh, I know how this is going to end in terms of the last time I saw these things. And it's just a quick moment, a really nice panel of Guts being surrounded by him. Not really, I guess, nice, or terrifying and awful, but it looks amazing. We go back to Isidro and the party, and Serpico and Isidro both concur that this is something that they remember from Albion. And instead of running, they decide to stand and fight. And in that slasher moment, when Ismail was shocked at how easy and how big a swing that was, I knew at that moment it was our boy. And sure enough, there he was. It was Skull Knight. I kept saying for the past 3 chapters that, yeah, the next one's going to be Skull Knight. Nah, next one's going to be Skull Knight. I just gave up. I just started assuming he'll pop up in the next one. If he doesn't, it'll be the one after that. And I'll just keep saying that until he pops up. And here he is. And I was pretty happy that he just, he just came out of nowhere. He looks great. I think he looks awesome. And I think this is the first time maybe Isidro and a bunch of the others have interacted with the Skull Knight, because the only ones who have interacted with him were Shirke and Guts. So this is cool because now Skull Knight is being more familiarized with the rest of the characters. And you can tell whenever he speaks, there is a lot that we can learn about the situation we're currently facing. I think these next couple panels with Skull Knight talks actually tells us so much about maybe what is happening right now, and also what's going to be happening in the next couple chapters, at least on Elfhelm. Just to reiterate, I kind of want to go off what he says. He says, "Tonight a beam of blinding light pierced this land. That flash wedged open fissures which act as passages all over." Now, we have to assume the blinding light was Griffith, even though he is a bringer of darkness. Like Ganishka said, that the one who stands in the light the most is one who casts the largest shadow. And I think to an extent that probably hints at Griffith, and him being here has opened a chasm of darkness, a fissure which allows all these different entities of darkness that was within Elfhelm and outside to enter in. A lot of people were talking about how Zod was even able to get into Elfhelm. And I think it's because with Griffith being one of the ultimate evil, at least serving the idea of evil, you're pretty high ranking on that list, it has opened this gateway into this land that was nigh untouchable unless allowed to be entered by the denizens. This has then created that moment. I gotta say, in terms of maybe one of my old videos not aging well, Skull Knight will betray Guts. I love seeing this moment because it shows not only Skull Knight wanting to protect Guts' party, but also Danon. Maybe we're gonna get a lot of character development here, especially with Skull Knight, and I didn't expect that would happen, at least not with him, anytime soon. He also mentions that that is how these things got here. The fact is, this land is sustained thanks to them. You could say they are the true lords of the island. That's an interesting thing. The land was sustained by them, and I assume it was the dead, or the ones who used to live. It's hard because it makes me think that this darkness was always inside the land, and maybe Elfhelm sustained itself by having some of it in there, that it was able to keep itself safe from the rest of the world. I'm not sure, but that's a little thing that could be talked about, hinted about. Get a cool little moment of him trying to protect them, and that he can't do it. He can't protect all of them if they were to stay. And usually, I imagine we'd all be like, yeah, I'm out. But Isidro decides to stand and fight. And this is something that Skull Knight makes him start to wonder a bit more about causality and fate. And this is something that I really would love to maybe talk a bit more about in a future video, but it's very important to note. Isidro himself says, "I'm not going to run away, I'm going to stay and fight." And Isma's also behind him. Skull Knight scoffs at this and says, "This collapse may have been preordained, but could the undying will of man to resist also be a part of fate?" This could mean what is happening here. Could the undying will of man be enough to resist what is happening? And is that part of the plan? Is that part of fate's weave? for these characters to resist and actually make it out alive. But it also kind of makes you think a bit more about who he is and who Guts is. Was Guts surviving the eclipse a part of fate? Was he surviving his eclipse a part of fate? That's something that he's asking, and I feel like maybe I'm grasping at straws, but that's something that made me think about. Is the undying will of man to resist also part of the plan, even though it's resisting against the thing that has fated all these things to happen? I don't know, something to think about. We finally get to another part of the island, which I think also, now we're really getting to the point where we see almost every single major character part of the group of the Black Swordsman party. We're seeing every character experience the earthquake and see the spirits of the undead come out from the ground. We see Roderick, and I was pretty happy to see him, and he was just talking about how, and he's packing up the ship because he got a warning from the mermaids that there is a crisis about to happen, most assumedly because they sensed Griffith's presence. And they knew darkness was currently here on the island. And this is something I think that is just really interesting about Roderick, is that he's also sent word to the village that they need to leave because the mermaids themselves said that this is something that is going to be unavoidable, and he's going to heed that warning. And it kind of shows that most men would probably heed it off as nonsense, but Roderick, he's a smart thinker, he's cautious, he's acknowledging that he's in a realm that isn't human. He should trust the word of those who can feel things he can't. We see Magnifico again, we see the Mustache Knight, which is really cool. And at that moment, after just a bit of fun to just trying to load them on the ship, the earthquake happens at the exact same time, and we see the spirits of the undead roll down the hills of Elfhelm and consume one of the sailors, which is, I was like, oh shit, I haven't seen that happen in a while. Suddenly, all those happy days on Elfhelm really are gone, because now death is really on this island, and true darkness is enveloping everything that is just consuming all kinds of life. This is very, very fucking serious. And this moment kind of made me really think, are we going to lose someone? And that's something that I think is a definite possibility. We've had it pretty good for quite a few chapters. We've had a lot of minimal deaths, and they're surrounded, and it's something that we're not sure that they're going to get out of it. I mean, Roderick has no experience fighting these, and he may have stories that was told to him by the Black Swordsman party on how to fight these kind of beasts, because it's always either physical attacks that do mild damage or fire. And if he can figure that out, he might be able to win. I think what will happen is that they will stay close to the fire and be able to stay safe long enough for someone to come help them. Because what happens here earlier in the panels, and I think this is a bit of a foreshadowing, when the earthquake happens, fish are jumping out of the sea, people are falling down, and one of the sailors knocks over the torch that hits the grass, and the grass may ignite and light on fire. But I think that might actually be a blessing in disguise, and that will be a little thing that shows Roderick, oh, these things can't touch light or fire specifically, and he'll use that to get out of that situation. He is someone who could be saved, but Roderick is a smart dude. He's adaptable, and I think he has that undying will of man to, you know, fight. As long as, the same with all the other characters, they have that innate ability to survive, especially tagging along with Guts. I think they've inherited that. And I can see here in a lot of these panels that they're coming towards them, and Roderick is the one close near the fire. I think most likely they'll get close, and then the fire will keep them at bay and they won't be able to move around him. And I think that is what will keep him alive, at least long enough to be aided by someone. But of course, his mind goes to Farnese. Now, we don't see Farnese and Shirkei at all for this chapter. Instead, we go back to Guts, who is shaking and trembling down in the chasm, again surrounded by all these spirits who are chanting sacrifice, sacrifice. He's knee deep, it looks like, in these spirits, and he just looks up to the sky, sees Zod carrying away Griffith and Casca, who is coming in and out of consciousness, and we're not sure if she sees him, but we haven't had a lot of moments of Guts talking. I said that earlier, but these past couple chapters for him have been a fucking whirlwind of emotion. Let's run it. Number one, he's seen his old friend of many years ago, who he cherished very much closely, who betrayed him, who he hates more than anything else in this world, and is the reason for a lot of the bad stuff that later happened in his life, and for the reason of losing everything he ever cared about. And comes back out of nowhere after thinking maybe he was done thinking about this guy and just being here peacefully on Elfhelm, maybe even not being with Casca, at least having her be with other people is enough. Then having him turn up again, fight him, unable to kill him, cause Casca more pain by mentally shocking her, fighting Zod, hugging her, shocking him, confusing him, sending him to the ground to be consumed by these dead spirits, and taking her away again. It's too much, man. I feel like having nothing come from Guts' mouth for a while makes me feel like this is something that, it's just awful. I want him to be able to converse with his companions again. You know, he's not the most talkative guy. He never has been, but there are times when it feels like it's great to hear him give some ways of confidence, even though he's just being brash and rude. He's making people feel like they have purpose, even when he has none. And it does feel like everything's kind of gone down the shitter. I really, really, really want for him to speak. Not in a way where, oh, I want more dialogue from chapters, these chapters suck. No, I'm not saying that at all. I want him to speak and be able to evoke what he's feeling to the people around him, because I'm seeing what he's going through and no one's there with him. He's alone in that darkness right there, and I want him to get out of it. And I hope that Cherokee and Farnese are able to get him out, because they're the ones who were closest to him at the time. But yeah, the chapter ends with him reaching to the sky to try and get there, and the rocks fall down and the spirits swarm around him. I don't know, like, you know, he's been through a lot of stuff, and I imagine he'll live. But at the same time, there is a difference for Guts to be physically crushed. You know, he's been in so much physical pain his entire life, and I think for him that's nothing compared to any kind of emotional pain he's felt. You know, physical pain, cuts, bruises, broken arms, broken limbs, anything, burns. This is nothing compared to the emotional pain he feels. So we know he'll be fine in getting crushed essentially underneath all these rocks, you know, especially with that armor. But will he want to get up? That's what I'm scared about. He's always gotten up. He's always gotten up and kept walking. Or if it's at this point where it's like, there is a point in some people's lives where they take so many L's, and I'm in a serious way. They take so much shit, they take so many losses, that it kind of feels like, what's the point? Guts has never been that dude, regardless of really bad shit happening in his life. But this is kind of like another turning point where it feels like, is he going to give up? He's lost his girl. The island he was staying peacefully is now pretty much destroyed. It kind of feels like, what else is there? Is it impossible? And I think it might be up to his companions to convince him to go and get Casca back, because they care about her now. They've spent a lot of time with her as well. They see her as a friend. They see her as a companion. And I think I want that to definitely happen. Sum it up with the chapter ending. Puck is still in the air and he's seeing all this happen. I think he's probably going to be the one to try and rendezvous everyone. He's able to move through the air. I imagine he'll be able to go provide aid to every single one, or at least communicate between them. But in the air, he can see the entire destruction of the island. Essentially, the island having an earthquake of devastation, or it's destabilizing it. I think we do know this is the end of Elfhelm. There's no coming back from this, I imagine, at least until the daylight. But this entire land is completely destabilized by the presence of one of the 5 truly ultimate beings in this realm. And as the last panel says, an endless darkness swallows everything. This could definitely just be a repeat of Conviction. And I do think a lot of our characters get out of it, so I don't know if every single one. Last time something happened like this that happened at Conviction, it wasn't pretty. So we'll have to wait and see. In terms of my predictions of what I think will happen, I think Guts will have to try and pull himself out of this rut in some way. Someone might have to come to him. Maybe Puck will be the one to finally bring him back out of that mud. Puck has always been there since the beginning in terms of following on his journey, even though he didn't want Puck there in the first place. Cherokee and Farnese are probably going to try and find out where they are, at least find their way amongst all these spirits. Isidro will be with Ismar, Serpico, Den, and Skull Knight, and I imagine they'll be able to survive for a while, at least until the morning, but that's pretty much all that will be happening, I imagine. You just have to survive till the morning, because nothing will change until that happens. And it's going to be pretty insane, and I'm not sure. I do think Roderick will be able to figure out how to protect himself and the sailors with fire. I really think he's a smart dude. I think he can figure it out. Just the question of how long can every single group survive until the morning. I'm not sure, but I love this chapter. It was great. And I feel like I've learned so much more than I did before. And that's always been something that I've been loving about every single new chapter, is we learn something new every single chapter. And that's what you want in a story. If we're not learning some new piece of information in every single scene, then what are we really learning? What is it that, you know, is pushing the story forward? And every single time I read a chapter, it feels like the stakes just get higher. And I can't wait to see, again, September 9th. Gonna be very exciting. But yeah, that's what I think. I'll definitely be doing maybe a couple more streams and videos, maybe talking about certain moments or certain things that were talked about and talking about them. So stay tuned for that and subscribe. I will probably do a live stream and ask for your reactions as well. But if you don't want to be there, then please tell me down below, comment. I want to hear everything you think. But that's what I think, guys. If you watched the all the way through, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Subscribe and like would also be very appreciated. My name's Mugen. As always, have a good one.